Welcome to No Contest. You are here with Josh Colesrud, Holland Reed, and myself, Claudia King. We are a new podcast. Today, we are here for you true crime lovers because we're going to be talking about the Tepe case, the Ohio dentist and his wife who were gunned down in their own home. And we're going to hit the big topic of the recent ICE shooting in Minnesota. Guys, I can't even believe that we're going to cover these topics today. Are we insane? Probably. But that's what we do. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us, first off, turn on Court TV because this is your Friday think tank right here on closing arguments. And what we want to give you guys is a deeper dive into what we talk about on that show every week. Because we have a limited time on there. We got to pay the sponsors and everything with commercials. Well, here, we don't have to worry about that. So we're going to dig in even deeper to those cases. Josh Colesrud, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. I think we have such a wonderful dynamic on Court TV, and it's so awesome that we have collaborated and are doing this. It's going to be so much fun. So I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I've lived all over the country and the world as a prosecutor. I started off as a state prosecutor and then went internationally to the South Pacific. Came back and worked for the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, where I was involved in some heavy cases against the Mexican cartels. And then eventually I decided I wanted to retire someday. So I turned to the other side and became a defense attorney. But I'm glad I did. I've learned really what the other side is all about, and that there really are two sides to every story. And it's helped me grow as a person and certainly helped me grow as an attorney.
I love it, Josh, because I'm from a law enforcement background, and so I typically take the side of law enforcement. You guys have seen me, though, call them out when necessary, but it's so great to have your perspective because you really bring the law into it. You take our emotion and you counter that with what's actually legal and what's not when it comes to crimes and then in a court of law. It's fantastic. And this is why we love you.
Yeah, and
Yes.
there's another thing I didn't mention, which is like I am also a survivor of a horrific attack. When I was 21, I was stabbed and almost lost the use of my left arm. Actually, it's about 95% paralyzed. And it was just a random attack. I was just standing on a street corner, and some guy who I never met before, who I never did anything to, just came up and started sawing me under my armpit and almost amputated my arm off. And luckily I survived, but we didn't know who did it. And I had to go through the criminal justice system as a victim. And we had a huge silent witness campaign, and the person who did it started bragging about it to his girlfriend, and she turned him in. And it turned out that it was like a rich kid, 22 years old, and he was probably high on meth or something. And he hired the most expensive defense attorney in Arizona at the time. And for me, I felt like if this guy won, there would be no justice for me. But we had a wonderful prosecutor on the case, and we went to trial. And I was on the witness stand for about 2.5 hours, and the trial lasted about a week. But the jury convicted him. And then after that, I wanted to become a lawyer, a prosecutor, to help other victims out. The reason why I tell this story is just so the listeners kind of know where I'm coming from sometimes, especially when we're talking about victims of crimes. And I know that you guys also have some really personal stories regarding that stuff too. Thank you.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because I was going to say it, but it's not my story to tell. So I appreciate that you told that story. Holland, I want to throw it over to you for a second. Holland Reed, I mean, you are just a beautiful, bright, bubbly soul, and you are the one on our show that just brings it. Like, you bring the emotion, you bring the heat every single time. Tell everybody a little bit about you.
Oh, you are so sweet, Claudia. This is why I love being here with both of you. First of all, Josh, holy Moses, we are going to dive into that conversation at some point because wow. And wow, I did not know that about you. And that even makes me love you even more.
Thanks.
And that is something that we, I think, all have in common is you get passionate about the law because sometimes either the law has failed you or the law has worked in your favor, or you've had to figure out the relatability of where the law can be a part of your story. Maybe not, it helps you heal. I know that sounds maybe like, like an existential crisis for some people, but it truly is. It's what it's here for. It's here to make people whole. And so my name is Holland Reed. I come from an entertainment background. I started off as a dancer, moved to Los Angeles, $400 with a baby on my hip, made it work, worked my own contracts out, argued my own contracts, got obsessed with entertainment law, never became a lawyer, and then fell into the world of entertainment where I saw a lot of things unfold and happen that were not okay with how things should be, especially not just for young women, but for young men, because we don't want to exclude any gender, anybody that whatever they identify as. But I saw a lot of things in power dynamics that I was not okay with, and I started advocating for myself. And I won a lot of those cases on my own because I could not afford an attorney. And then you can fast forward to moving from Los Angeles to Atlanta. And I actually ended up doing the same thing. But in the interim of all of that, dating a lawyer, two different lawyers that outlawyered me in scenarios where my talent was abused. I was physically and emotionally abused. And then I became an advocate for other young artists, and also in situations where I just was not having it anymore. So, and you're going to have to forgive me. I'm on my casual day. The Eagles play today. I'm not in the blazer. We didn't have the team meeting, but look, this is how I am.
This is you.
She said I was adorable, but no, I'm a hot mess. 90% of the time, I'm going to say the thing. And I think that's where we want to have the discussion after court TV, after hours, is so that the thing can be said, because I was so quiet for so long, stepping on eggshells around powerful people, that I realized will still, no matter what, be taken down. And we talk about it all the time. It's happened in my personal life a multitude of times, and we see it happening and playing out on live television, on court TV. We discuss this on a regular basis. So my background, while I do not have a law degree, trust me, I got a lot of very good lawyers in my corner, and good law professionals and advocates and experts in my corner that advise me on a regular basis. And we want to continue to have these conversations, and I'm happy to be a mouthpiece for that.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So quickly, a little bit about me, and then I'm so excited to jump into these cases. I am a former law enforcement officer, and as Josh mentioned, I suffered some trauma of my own. I was actually in a domestic violence relationship while I was a police officer with another police officer. So that transitioned me into becoming a domestic violence and trauma recovery specialist. So my goal now is to really help people who have been through domestic violence or serious trauma heal and know that they're worth it and get back to a place of feeling amazing about themselves. In addition to that whole DV situation in 2017, I was kidnapped and assaulted in Colorado, and now I have PTSD from that too. So we're just a group of messed up people here that are excited to talk about true crime and the law with you guys. Let's hop into it. So our first case, we just talked about it on Friday night on Closing Arguments. Spencer and Monique Tepe, Ohio. Spencer was a dentist. Monique, I honestly don't know. Stay-at-home mom, and I don't know. Whatever she was beautiful, lovely lady. They were gunned down in their home in the middle of the night. We kind of had some ideas that this was personal. All of us agreed that this, it had a personal flavor to it. Monique's ex-husband has been arrested for this crime. Josh, what do you think about this arrest? And, are they jumping the gun and just going straight to the crazy ex? What are your thoughts on this?
I'm glad that the law enforcement was reticent and didn't give a lot of details up front, because they do that when they apprehend somebody. They want to grill them on information that hasn't been in the media yet. And what I would anticipate is that they found information that links the crime scene to the ex-husband that cannot be explained away. I wouldn't be surprised if we later heard that there were allegations of abuse, prior allegations of abuse and domestic violence, maybe signs and symptoms of extreme jealousy or stalking. And what they're going to do as well is they're going to try to geolocate where the ex-husband was using his electronic devices. Now, some viewers may say, well, what if he had his device turned off? Well, that can be just as big of a red flag as if they found that device in the area, because who turns their device off, really? I mean, off, where there's no power to it. And if it's coincidentally off during 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., which is supposedly the time that these murders took place, he's not going to have a good explanation for that. And another thing that I'm looking forward to is the autopsy report, because it's going to tell us whether or not a silencer was used. Because when a silencer is used, the gases come out in a certain way, and they do what's called a gunshot residue test, where they test where all the expelling gases are, and they can see whether or not a silencer is used. Now, the reason why I say that is because nobody heard the gunshots, supposedly. The next door neighbors didn't hear it. We don't know yet if the children are old enough to even comprehend to communicate whether or not they heard loud noises. So that's going to be interesting, because it goes towards motive, of course. So a lot of things are going to come out, and it's really interesting. And thank God they captured and apprehended the suspect, assuming that this is the guy and they have enough evidence to point towards him.
How do you defend a guy like this? Not
well,
you, but what is the strategy that you look towards?
Well, in this case, in these types of cases, you have to only go with alibi, because, alibi or it wasn't me. You can't say it's self-defense, because what happened was indefensible. You have two adults who were in their own home who have multiple gunshot wounds reportedly in their beds. So it's not a scenario where anybody would reasonably think, oh, this looks like self-defense. So he either didn't do it, which of course goes into alibi. So I guess those two kind of go together. Those are the only two viable defenses if he's going to win this case.
Holland, I want you to talk a little bit about the domestic violence aspect of this. You and I had a conversation and discussed that these two divorced in 2017. So the suspect and the victim divorced in 2017. It's now 2026. So that's 8-9 years that they have been apart. Talk about what that says. If this is the killer, what does that say about him and his mental state?
So we had this extended conversation, kind of precursor to what we're talking about right now, is this obsessive relationship, this lack of detachment, ability to detach. Go to therapy. Figure out why you can't let go. Let's start there. And then I shared my personal story, and I explained this before. My abuser, which I didn't even realize. Let's just say this for the audience. I didn't even realize she was an abuser until I did, because I was like, oh, she's just passionate. She's just crazy. She's just, all these terms that are used, like he just still loves me. She just still loves me. No, actually, this person, as you mentioned, and I wrote my little note last night, it was like the objective is control. If I can't have you, nobody will. And if I can't control you, then I will find the way to control this scenario and the situation. And so my abuser was still stalking me and harassing myself, my property, 7 years later. 7 years later. So, and I said it before, I'll say it again. Thank God it did not end the way this tragically ended. But I think that obsession with abuse is sometimes always written off as something, just a casual love affair, and it's chaotic. Oh, it's toxic. Oh, they're a narcissist. Actually, they might have a plan. They might not have gotten the same therapy and mental help that you did to get through the divorce or the marriage or what have you. And they're living a completely different reality than you are. You've moved on, you got married, you had 2 children, you're in your home, and you're trying to go forward, whether she was abused or not, housewife or not, or what have you. But this person, they're still married. They're still with you. You belong to them, and they can't get over the idea that somehow they've lost you or can't have access to you. And I think that's another big thing that I've been having this conversation with a lot of friends of mine in divorce. It's the idea of access. And even when Josh was talking about how do they get into the house, or we were talking about it's a metaphorical backdoor entrance and then also a physical backdoor entrance, like the codes versus can I pick up the phone and still call you and are you still going to answer? And all of those things are weaponized, in my opinion, on the back end with an abuser to try to see how much access do they still have to you, how much control. Thank you for that, the last night. And then using that when they really are seeing red, enraged, have an episode, or whatever happens to them where they have to take it to yet another level. It might not, like I said, my abuser, it was keying cars and breaking an entry. And thank God it wasn't a gunshot to my head, but it was still the pattern of a felony, right? And I'm sure Josh can speak to this. It starts small and sometimes ends tragically.
I love that you brought up start small, because one of the things I wanted us to chat a little bit about was that incident about 11 days beforehand, about 2 a.m. Somebody is knocking on a neighbor's door, 7 houses down. I firmly believe that this was him. He was testing out a couple things. One, police response time. And then also, if noises occur in this neighborhood, are other people going to call the police?
Claudia, really quick. Do you think he was that smart, or do you think that he had the wrong address? Because my crazy ex simply had the wrong address. And she was banging on doors, and people were reporting this person banging on doors. Do you think he was that smart?
I do. Sadly, I don't think it was the wrong address because of the banging, because he went in very stealth in the actual crime. So I think it was a test. But Josh, what do you think?
Well, obsession drives people to do that type of meticulous planning, and certainly deals with obsession. There are a few things that I'd like to know. And Claudia, that's a wonderful idea. I mean, I don't think I heard that anywhere else, that this suspect, could have been testing the capabilities of the police. I don't think anybody ever thought about that. And I hope that the police department really looks into that. And Holland, you raise a good idea too. I mean, he doesn't necessarily seem like the smartest individual, because if he was so smart, why did he leave the 2 shell casings in the house? I mean, it's a very amateur thing to do if you think about it, because it could tie back directly to the firearm that he used. Now, you guys talked about starting small, and one of the things that I see when I used to prosecute and now defend domestic violence is that the acts against another person escalate. It almost always starts with escalation, because they want to normalize the activity and the violence and the control. And once that has been established, the feeling of normalization, then you enter into a stage of helplessness, and you really have nowhere to go except for back in the arms of your abuser. So that's probably where this person's mindset was.
I'm just gonna jump in and say, and I just wrote this down because the multiple times that the police were called on my person, one of them, well, the first two times I called her friends because I truly wanted to protect her from herself. And I looked back and I didn't realize what it was when it was happening. And they were like, and the second time they said, you probably should just call the police at this point because this is not going to end well. And what she said to me, and I just wrote it down because it just came to me. She goes, oh, this is just what me and Holland do. And I was like, no, it's not. This is what you do. And this is what I'm putting up with. And this is what I don't know how to get out of because I've never been in an abusive relationship. So I had no idea that it was abuse. I thought it was just a chaotic, queer, and also let me just say this to anybody that's watching. Same-sex abuse goes underreported more than anything because people think it's equal match. And it's not. It's not. So this was a situation where I was calling on friends and family versus calling the police. Again, she was an attorney and her own friends had to come in and intervene. I was on the phone. Claudia, I told you I had to send you and these were things where I was just like, my mind was blown for the first time. So I'm not saying that this the Tepe situation is that. What I'm saying is like there's so many levels to this where you don't realize you're in it till you're in it, and you just try to get past it and move forward. I just wanted to share that little snippet.
I'm glad you did, and that takes me back to a point that Josh makes so many good points. It's just get out of here. You talked about looking at potential prior abuse between the suspect and Monique, the victim. And I want to say as well, there might not be any police reports of said abuse because she may not have ever reported it. But there still could be reports to friends, outcries when something happened, journals, phone entries of some type that speak to what Josh talked about, that history of abuse. Doesn't mean it was reported to police, but there still could be a history.
Yeah, and disclosure is so important. When I was a prosecutor and we had a he said, she said scenario, who do you believe? Well, you follow the evidence, and there is a whole litany of science about victims and when and how they disclose. It doesn't mean disclose what happened to law enforcement necessarily. It just means disclosure. And the sooner in time that the disclosure happens, it could be to a friend, a colleague, anybody who is a confidant, the more believable it is, in the eyes of the law, at least. So let's say that, victim X is abused. And if this person then discloses the next day to the mother that, this person abused her, that's going to be much more believable than if victim X doesn't disclose for 10 years and then comes forward for the first time. So disclosure in these types of cases, whether it's to law enforcement or to a friend or whoever, is very important. And the timing of the disclosure is equally as important.
So, okay, can I jump in really quick? And I'm going to play extreme devil's advocate here with what you just said, Josh. Okay. Believability. Now, this is her ex-husband. I'm going to full transparency. The reason why my crazy ex-girlfriend and my ex-wife, it was, confrontational is because I did entertain and it was nothing nefarious, nothing crazy, but I'm not a perfect witness. I entertained the conversation with an ex, and then that bled into my marriage, which led to my divorce. Now, with that being said, again, we're here to keep it real. I'm going to be the one that keeps it real right now. What if this wife was having relationship with the ex-husband while she was married in the court of law with the jury or what have you, Josh, and both of you law enforcement, when you're looking at believability and it's not that did they deserve this crime? Nobody deserves this. This is tragic all the way around. But when you're looking at accountability for the person who committed the crime, right? It's like, oh, did she play a part? She's not here to defend herself.
Well, you raise a great point. And what you're bringing up is what we call heat of passion. So
Okay.
if there was some type of sexual relationship between the victim wife and her ex-husband at or near the time of her murder, there could be very well a viable heat of passion defense. Now, what does that mean? It means that he would have to admit to murdering them, but he did so under the heat of passion, almost where the classical scenario is that a husband comes home and catches his wife with a lover. He is overcome by emotion and kills everybody there. That in the eyes of the law, he's not as culpable as somebody like Brian Koberger. If you remember him, he's the Idaho
I was just
killer.
yes.
And
That's what I was just looking up. Yeah.
So it's more akin to almost like a manslaughter, and the typical sentence would go from a life sentence, probably somewhere between 10 and 20 years for a heat of passion type of scenario.
I'm wondering now, and gosh, I really hope we're not giving the defense ideas, but what if he comes out and claims that's what was happening, and then he can say, that's how I knew the code to get in the house because I've been getting in that house,
Claudia,
for a while.
I'm sorry, I just I get excited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
that's what I'm saying. When there was no breaking an entry, he got it. So it was like, when I said before, and I predicted this, and I said I don't like to bet on things like this. I said there's an affair. There's something unfinished. There's somebody close to them. There's something going on. There's no way that could have happened without someone having access.
And there was no signs of breaking in. Remember that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So Josh, let's talk about that for a minute. Is there a scenario where he says, we were having an affair, I went to her house all the time, that's how I knew how to get in? Is there some way to twist this into a self-defense because he was there and the husband came home or something?
I think that it would be difficult, and I'll tell you why. It's because it wasn't his residence. It would only turn into a self-defense scenario if he was invited there by both the husband and the wife. So if, let's just say, we're throwing this way out in left field. Let's
These
say
are
that
theories. These are our theories. These are just talking points, not even theories.
This is the sleuth of the internet. Everybody calm down. Don't get, this is just what the conversation should be.
Because I know where he's going. I know.
Go ahead. Yes, I know.
Okay, so here's how self-defense could come in if these facts were all true. So if the ex-husband was invited there by both the murdered husband and wife to be a part of some fantasy, some sexual fantasy, like what we saw in the au pair murders that we talked about on Friday night, just to do a little bit of callback.
Right.
And let's say that during the sexual escapade, things got heated and the murdered husband decided that he didn't like this and he was going to try to injure the ex-husband, using a weapon. And then the ex-husband responded by shooting him and the wife. That could be a scenario. And if that is the scenario, it's going to be very fascinating to find out about the evidence. And I'm sure it's going to become, national news like the au pair case.
That would be crazy. That would be crazy. Go ahead, Holland.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that you're like you said, that's left field. That's so far, that's such an overreach of even like common sense. I think from someone like me that is not, an expert in any of this, but also passionate about it. You see the guy walking back and forth. You see him in a hoodie. You see him. It seems very intentional. He didn't just come from a sexcapade. He didn't have on in his clothes, hopping in a car, and he just, I'm nervous or whatever. No, he's clearly marching up and down the street, hiding himself, was there prior. If anybody, help me out, Josh. If the defense, it's just use your common sense on this one with that. it seems like whatever was lingering between them, whether it was in his mind or something that she was a part of, is what the problem is and what created I think the motive for the crime, if I'm wrong.
Sure.
I mean, if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, I need a steak dinner, Josh. Steak dinner immediately.
Yep. So one of the things that they're going to be testing for is called a serology test. And it tests for the different types of DNA liquids that are found at the crime scene. So that would include saliva, vaginal fluid, insemination, semen. And if there's a positive outcome for that, we'll be able to find out whether or not there is a positive serology test and then break it down from there. And we'll be able to see if there was any type of sexual contact prior to the murder. So that's actually a question that is going to be answered probably in the next month or two.
And that'll come from the autopsy, correct?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Well, it's part of the autopsy and DNA analysis. So they're actually separate. The autopsy is an observation by a coroner, so to speak, right? And it's a licensed doctor who then cuts open the body and looks for a cause of death. And then that doctor then writes a report about what he or she has seen. But also, they weigh the organs to see if, how they were impacted. And this helps with cause of death as well. I won't get into that in this case, but they do test for DNA over the entire crime scene. And that goes to what's called a criminalist. And that goes to somebody who specializes in serology and DNA analysis. Typically, that takes about 6 to 8 weeks for most cases.
Hey, Claudia, I had a question for you. And please, again, forgive my ignorance on this. In a situation like that, when you're securing a crime scene, there's a crime scene, you're securing that, but then securing what he just said. Like, how does, for me as a layman, I have zero clue about that, because it's like, okay, well,
right.
You're looking at a bullet wound versus vaginal insemination. Like, is that what it's
Absolutely. So when you think about a crime scene, you always want to kind of go bigger than you think you should. And it's funny because in rookie school, I remember, we would rope off a crime scene like 4 neighborhoods away because we're just like, I don't know, there could be evidence here. So that's a little crazy. But when you're looking at something like this, obviously the room is the ultimate crime scene, but the whole house. Mm-hmm. And the curtilage, so right around the house, that's
and
your
the body. I'm assuming,
scene.
Of course. I mean, that we know that the body.
So
okay.
All the trash cans nearby.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay. So you're gonna preserve those bodies by not touching them with gloves. Obviously they're gonna have to do some movement potentially to flip somebody over, see what's going on, make sure they're dead. But you want to touch as little as possible, and that's why police officers should always wear gloves, because anything you touch now, you don't want your DNA, your fingerprints to get mixed in.
Yeah.
Yes, to contaminate what else is going on there. Now they can separate that out. They can then, they could take my DNA and say, oh, okay, that was Claudia. She's a dummy and she touched the body. But that just makes a messier case from the start.
That's what I was getting at. Like, I mean, I know, not to sound graphic or gross. I'm like, okay, one thing blood, another thing semen. I just always am like, how do you secure that? Like, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yep. So you're going to secure the whole body, and that's why each body gets its own body bag.
Does a dead body? I'm sorry. This is going to be a really graphic question.
That's what we're here
for.
On
site, does a deceased female get a vaginal exam on site?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm just, again, because I'm like, how do you determine who was doing what with who? When you were saying about, like, if it was a, fantasy, not a fantasy, what have you. Like, these are just things that I think of when I'm reading these cases. Like, how do you determine
it's going to go back to a sterile area.
Okay.
Where all that testing and swabs are taken. all
Okay.
that good stuff.
Just hey, look, just
Hey,
a internet sleuth question.
Yeah.
If you have the question, other people have the question.
Yeah, and
Good,
ultimately it's up to a prosecutor to
Okay.
determine what happened. So once the case is finished being investigated, all the reports will be written and submitted to the local prosecutor's office with suggested charges. But ultimately, it's up to the assigned prosecutor to determine what happened and what the appropriate charges will be in this case.
Okay.
Holland, final thoughts on this case.
Woo. Okay. Wow. I mean, so first of all, let me just say this is, I love, like, when they say, what is the phrase? A wise man knows nothing. And I feel like I get wiser daily, right? Like, no, I love understanding the processes for all of these things. And you guys help me out so much. I'm passionate about my opinions. Those are my opinions. And that's the thing I think, with this case, there's so many opinions. And then with all the cases we talk about, right? There's so many. The Diddy, case, even with the Diddy case, you're like, she liked it. My own sister was like, she liked it, so she doesn't feel like Diddy's guilty. And I'm like, mind blown. I want to just punch my own sister. Like, I was like, what are you talking about? But for this, it feels like the information is going to be the most important piece of the puzzle. Like you said, all the what is it? I'm sorry, one more time. The
geolocation. Yep.
The geolocations, the DNA. Was there anything else going on? Like all those, the cell phone information, everything else that was going on. There's so many unanswered questions. I will stick to my guns. I will still bet my steak dinner and $100 to anybody or whoever that, there was something else happening on the side, or there was some type of communication that was trying to appease the abuser that could not appease the abuser, and he went left. That's my gut instinct based on the information that we have now and based on my own experiences.
So you think we're going to see, in recency to the murder, communication between?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. All
right.
I believe that she was still trying to be friends or friendly. I think that she was trying to just keep things at bay. I think that she was moving on with her life actively, and in the same time frame, also gassing him up for him to think he had hope for something in the future, and it drove him over the edge.
Josh, what do you think? What's your final thoughts on this one?
Well, I think Holland hit the nail on the head. There's a backstory that is unanswered right now, and really the public and society really is demanding to know why this happened. I mean, we have this tragedy where you have two young children who are now parentless. And the stepfather is not going to be seeing these children ever again, and their two parents are now deceased, and this is a tragedy for them. And for the victims, I really hope that ultimately they get justice in this case. Not that that's going to bring their parents back, but they do deserve something. I know society does too.
Absolutely. I'm not saying this is the last time we'll discuss this case, because there's a lot to learn still. For Josh Colesrud, Holland Reed, I'm Claudia King. We'll see you later.